Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very festive edition of the Reserve Team podcast. My name is Branson Gibson, and I'll be your host this week for our special Christmas edition of the show. We've got a huge episode ahead of us with the A-League and W-League seasons just around the corner. We'll take an in-depth look at all the matches in the opening rounds as we eagerly await the season to kick off. And then later on in the show, we'll get into the festive spirit and discuss what gift each club might be hoping to find under the Christmas tree this year. We've got a lot to get through. And with me tonight to go through it all, I'm joined by three very special guests. Firstly, from the Ladies League, we have Christina. How's it going? My Christmas coloured kits up on the background and red and white on today. So
all right,
feeling good.
Sorry, one sec. Hate to interrupt you. Can you go to Chrissy again? Because my internet dropped out a little bit and I didn't get all of her part. But just throw to Chrissy and just say welcome. And Chrissy, if you can just go through that part again, that'd be perfect.
Yep. Joining us first from the Ladies League, we have Christina. G'day, Chrissy. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
My Christmas coloured kit's up on in the background, red and white kit on tonight. I'm feeling festive. Thank you for joining us on the show. Also joining us from across the ditch, we have Zachary Taylor. G'day, Zach.
Hello, how are you? Good, enjoying the festive spirit?
Love it. Love the Santa hat. And lastly, the most festive of us all, he's always on the show. We have Sean. Good evening, Sean.
I mean, you summed it up. I'm always on the show. It's barely a special occasion at this point with the ridiculous shit that I've done so far on the opening weeks of this podcast, but still glad to be joining you. Hopefully, as we go through the opening fixtures, we'll also solve the mystery as to whatever the hell a match week is this year in the A-League, because, I don't know, is it 2 days, 3 days, a week? Nobody knows. But, yeah, looking forward to chatting with all of you guys.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate, it might not be a special occasion, but you have got your special outfit on. We're blessed. We're honoured. Love to see you wearing it and looking forward. Fast approaching. They're just around the corner. What we're going to do is take a look at all the opening fixtures. We're going to get started with the W League. So in round one, to kick off the season, we've got the Western Sydney Wanderers taking on the Melbourne Victory on Sunday the 27th at 4 p.m. That is the first game of a doubleheader with an A-League game on afterwards. After that, we've got the Newcastle Jets taking on Brisbane Roar on the Monday at 5 p.m. Perth Glory versus Canberra United on Tuesday the 29th at 9 p.m. I believe that's Australian Eastern Time. I don't imagine that'll be a 9 p.m. kickoff at Perth. And lastly, wrapping up round one for the W League, we have Sydney taking on Melbourne City. Chrissy, what are your thoughts on the Western Sydney Melbourne Victory game to kick off the season?
I think it's a pretty good game to kick off the season because both teams are looking to be quite strong with the signings that they've made in the last couple of weeks, so it should be an exciting one.
You're a Wanderers fan. What are you expecting from the first game of the season? Is it going to be hopefully there is a crowd, but what are you expecting from the team and for the season as a whole, really?
I'm expecting a lot from the team, especially for the first kickoff of the season. I have a lot of faith in the coaching staff as well as who they've signed and who they've re-signed as well as who's stayed. So I really do think that this squad, especially with the current signing they made, and hopefully this season we make it further than just the semi-finals.
Well, fingers crossed. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The second game of the round is the Newcastle Jets taking on Brisbane Roar. Sean, we were doing the podcast the other day where we had our first sort of live breaking news and we were reeling through all the Newcastle Jets W League signings. What can you see coming out of this one and who are you tipping?
Look, I'm still going Brisbane. Last week, of course, I picked Brisbane to kind of win a great deal, and I think they've got the best Matilda structure with the likes of Claire Polkinghorn and Emanuela Gielnik and Tamika Yallop and Katrina Gorey and all the people that we've spoken about. And yes, Newcastle have made some very late signings to actually get a W League squad ready for round one. I think they've added a 2 or 3 people since last week's podcast as well, but even then, I still don't look them as being particularly strong. So I think it's probably going to be a comfortable Brisbane win, and we could be look back on it as being something special for that Brisbane side because I think they are in tip-top shape heading into the season.
Well, we've got a lot riding on this one in round one. I think we both picked Newcastle Jets to finish on the bottom, and we both had Brisbane doing pretty well. We would look absolute fools if in round one the Jets get the victory over Brisbane, but if you're going to be wrong, may as well be wrong in round one, right?
Yeah, if you're going down, go down in flames, and it wouldn't surprise me if us being the kiss of death guarantees Newcastle 3 points in the first week.
The third game we've got in round one is Perth Glory taking on Canberra United. Zach, you're across the ditch in New Zealand. What are your anticipations for the W League this season, specifically this game?
I must confess I don't actually know that much about the W League because there's no New Zealand team, which is a farce, but that's another matter. But from what little I do know, it seems Canberra will win this quite comfortably. Perth have not been exactly the best team since Sam Kerr left for Chelsea.
Definitely. And the last game of the round is Sydney taking on Melbourne City on Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. This is also part of what should be a double header with City and Melbourne City's A-League sides facing off afterwards. I think this is going to be an interesting one, sort of Sydney FC, seeing if they really are going to be title contenders this year. And, of course, Melbourne City with so many players departing last year. I think it'll be interesting to see how they look in their title defence. Chrissy, taking a look at round one as a whole, which matchup are you going to be most interested in?
I'm sticking with my team, Righty, because I'm excited to see them play. It's going to be interesting because there are players that we have lost. Example, Ella Mastrantonio in the midfield and Alexandra Kuhn in the defence, and Jada Wyman. But that's definitely a game that I'm looking forward to seeing because I think round one will give me an idea of how we're going to go for the rest of the season. So it's going to be a bit of a make and break for me.
Sean, what's your pick of the bunch there? I mean, we were talking about Melbourne City the other night. I sort of rated them a little bit more highly. You sort of expected them to maybe drop off just because of the sheer number of players that they've lost. How do you think they'll go round one, and which of the other games are you most looking forward to, if not that one?
Yeah, I'm not saying this deliberately to rub it into Zach, but I'm also going for my own team's contest in this opening round of fixtures. I think Sydney FC will be a fascinating one. We spoke about them last week as kind of being a side that's got a really strong young talent group, but they are young. They're not necessarily as experienced as the rest. The challenge for Melbourne City is replacing so many of that Matilda setup that they lost last year. And at the moment, at time of recording, I could be wrong, 3 weeks into the season, I still think they're lacking like that proven goal scorer at a W League level. And I think you really need that to kind of get that difference in those tight contests and to win games against teams like Sydney FC, particularly away from home. So I'm kind of thinking Sydney FC will probably do well in this one, but I do expect Melbourne City to continue making signings. They signed a Japanese attacker earlier today from their national side setup, which is interesting to see. Western Sydney, I think, signed an Irish international. So we are starting to see some of those internationals come back in from the North American leagues. If that continues, I would expect City to be pretty aggressive in the window. So there's a good chance at time of recording, they're not looking that strong, but by the time round 1 or round 2 or round 3 comes in, there's a whole bunch of extra names on that team sheet. So yeah, that'll be a fascinating contest. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out.
Zach, we've seen our first two guests for their predictions have picked both teams that they support. As Sean mentioned, it's a little bit tricky for you to do that. So my question is going to be, as a Wellington fan, how important do you think it would be for the Knicks to get a W League license?
It's insanely important. Like in New Zealand at the moment, we have the ISPS Women's Under Premiership as our top women's competition. And that, as far as I know, is semi-pro or maybe even amateur. And it's just not a high enough level to develop like great female footballers. Like we have so many people going over to Europe to take those, to America to take those scholarship positions over there. And we've got some people playing in the W League, like a bunch have just signed for Perth, but it's just not enough. Like most of the football ferns are still playing semi-professional football in New Zealand. So it's just, we need that gateway. And it's not a bad thing for Australia either, because it won't be all made up of New Zealand players. Like if we're happy to finance that position and bring that team into the league, there's no reason why we can't develop some good Australian youth and give that back to Australia.
Donovan, I mean, from my point of view, it just makes total sense to have a New Zealand team in the league. But we'll see. Maybe next time when we do our season predictions, you'll have your own W League side to back. Chrissy, one final question just on round 1. Do you see much hope for Newcastle or Perth this season?
With the signings that I've seen in the last couple of days that they've made, the massive flash signing, I have a little more hope for them now. A lot of people wrote them off and said that they'd be like the wood and the spoon, just like we would see in the A-League team. But I'm quite excited to see what's going to happen now with all these signings. And a few of them we watched throughout the NPL season, especially Sonny Franco, who played for, I just went blank, Manly United. I really enjoyed watching Sonny at Manly United. Now watching her play for Newcastle Jets, it's going to be a really cool season to watch this side come together and actually make it hopefully in the top 6.
Well, the W League season is just around the corner. I can't believe, really, after such a long off season, how close it is. We're all excited for obviously the round one and the opening bunch of matches. What we're going to do now, though, is take a quick break and jump into our mailbag question. Okay, jumping into our mailbag segment this week, it is a festive edition of Mailbag, and the question we have this week is, what is the best football Christmas gift? Chrissy, I'll go to you first. What do you think the best football Christmas gift is?
I currently need a new pair of gloves, but if you want to go any higher, an A-League trophy would be freaking great.
When you say gloves, do you mean like playing gloves, goalkeeping to football, or somewhere like that, and help you out? Zach, what's your tip for the best Christmas football gift?
Well, I have 2 footballs, and both of them in the last week have been punctured in some way. So I would love a football or two, because you can't really play football without a football.
It is tricky. I don't know what the alternatives would be. Maybe a lettuce or a cabbage. What did they get punctured on?
Before.
What did they get punctured on?
Well, one was my 4-year-old cousin. She just kind of threw it off my deck, and we've got it's like a massive drop, like a good 20-meter drop onto sharp rocks. So it popped, and then the other one just got, I don't know, I just found it and it was punctured. So
So what you want for Christmas is you want a new football, and then what, less sharp punctury items just generally around your household.
Yeah.
Sean, what's your answer for the best Christmas gift?
I think
Christmas gift, sorry.
Yeah, look, not just for me, but for any of the football fans in your house, if you can, try and find one. And these are available at theladiesleague.com.au. You can get one of these fantastic Kappa tracksuits and look phenomenal heading into summer and the winter season ahead. So that would be my recommendation for anyone's Christmas gift if they're unsure what to buy anybody.
Fantastic. And that sort of leads in nicely to my ideal Christmas gift, on-field apparel. If you haven't got the sense yet, I'm a pretty big kit guy. So, best football Christmas gift can't be anything other than kits. I have two kits, actually, that I would, of course, sorry, they were really far away, specifically recommend this year. The first is the same one that Chrissy is modelling. It is the Ladies League away kit done by Kappa, complete with Ladies League logo and funky fresh black, pink and white pattern on the front. And the alternative is the Ladies League home kit, which is it's going for, what is it, I'm calling it the Spew Kit camo look, I think. Both are very festive. Spew Kit camo, do you reckon that's an appropriate adjective, Chrissy?
Good, pretty good.
It's maybe not the most catchy, but it is an accurate description. I think both are available, Sean, as you said, on the ladiesleague.com.au. Jumping into it now.
Thank God neither of us work in marketing, because that would have been an absolute disaster if we were getting paid for that. But that's fine. We'll,
I think dazzle camo may be a better term.
Yeah.
What was that one? Of us, we've got, a marketing future ahead of us. I think we'll nail it. But what we're going to do now is avoid any more marketing disasters, and we're going to jump into our A-League Round 1 preview. So, taking a look at the opening round of the A-League, kicking things off on the Sunday night, we have the Western Sydney Wanderers taking on Macarthur in Macarthur's first ever game on Sunday the 27th at 6:30 p.m. That is going to be the second game of a doubleheader, with the Wanderers W League side playing on earlier in the day. On the Monday, Western United taking on Adelaide United at 7 p.m. Brisbane Roar taking on Wellington on the Tuesday night. Sydney taking on Melbourne City in a grand final rematch on the Wednesday. That is also part of a doubleheader, with the Sydney-Melbourne City W League sides facing off earlier in the day as well. And then lastly, we have an F3 derby in round 1. We've got Central Coast taking on the Newcastle Jets. Chrissy, doubleheader for the Wanderers to open up the season. What are you expecting from the A-League side this season? And in particular, how do you think round 1 will go?
Jesus Christ, if we don't win this, I'm not going back to Parramatta. This is insane. I was going to bring out the derbies at the first round, don't they? Eddie, man, I'm going to start burning.
Ooh.
The moment that I found out that it was given to Macarthur, that's another reason why I hate them even more. I really don't think they deserve the spot. But I hope the Wanderers win, generally because we've talked ourselves up so much in the last couple of weeks, especially with who we've signed. and the way that we've signed them. So we've done Newcastle dirty a bunch of times, so it's a little upsetting. So put our money where our mouth is and actually use this squad to beat probably the most hated A-League team so far.
Wow, it's amazing. Macarthur haven't been around too long, but they've already done quite a lot to end up in your bad books. Is there any coming back? Is there any hope for them, or are they just in there for life?
Nah, they're in there for life. You rival, that's it.
The second game of the round we have is Western United taking on Adelaide United. Sean, how do you think this one's going to play out? Western United overall had a pretty successful first season. They made the finals, won a final, one win away from the grand final. Gee, said finals a lot just then. Anyway, how do you reckon they're going to go in round one?
Well, I mean, noted stalker and bully Mark Rodan doesn't have the best reputation for playing young players throughout the course of a season. So I think the challenge that's going to come with them is do Diamante and Berisha and Durante and some of those older legs that they've still got in that squad have another year ahead of them? If they do, we know they're absolute quality because we saw it last year in their run to the finals and their performances in the final series post-lockdown. I think Adelaide also have a very strong squad, but again, similar to what we've said with a few different teams across the A-League and W League, it is much younger this year than it has been in previous seasons. So I think the fascinating part will be how do both teams line up round one and how much of a marker is that them setting down for their teams and structures and the hierarchy of their playing groups in the first rounds. And I think both sides will be desperate to get off to a good start. We kind of mentioned throughout the course of the week in our season preview series, of course, Chrissy was a fantastic part of that. Zach was a part of that as well. You and I did Melbourne City. That the fixturing is so frustrating because there's so many teams that desperately need a win round one to set off a good marker for their fan groups and whatever else. I think Western United needs a win to try and capture hearts and minds in the west of Melbourne to get their crowds up and all that sort of stuff. They're playing out of a different stadium every week and they desperately need people to come along and watch them. And at the same time, Adelaide really needs to try and capture the Adelaide City and market's attention as well. They've got a young group and they really need to get as much fan support behind them as well. So I think Western United just shade it by the fact it being their home game. But I wouldn't be surprised if Adelaide can cause a bit of a boil over in that one.
We'll be watching very keenly to see how that one plays out. The third match of the round we have is the Brisbane Roar taking on the Wellington Phoenix. Zach, how do you see your Knicks going in this one?
We've lost a lot of players, a lot of depth, but we have brought in people like Tommy Hemage, and so I think that we probably will edge this one, but it will be a lot closer than this match was last year. Saying that, we did lose to them last year.
Also, more breaking, or not quite breaking news, but more news coming out of the Knicks today was that De Villa has been announced as the Phoenix captain for the upcoming season. Are you happy with that?
Well, it's a surprise choice because Rufer or De Vere were probably more obvious picks, but I mean, he's our best player, so I guess if someone's your best player by that distance, then you better give them the captaincy.
I do apologise, guys. I've accidentally ripped my headphones out, so my apologies, Zach. I couldn't hear the last part of your answer. I'm sure it was great, so my apologies there. I've done you dirty. The fourth game of the round is Sydney taking on Melbourne City. Sean, as a City fan, what are you looking forward to this one, and what do you think we can expect from Patrick Kisnorbo in his first game?
Yeah, look, I think they'll play well because their preseason results have been good. They've beaten each of the A-League sides, or at least drawn with them that they've played. I think we have had an undefeated preseason, which is great to see. I think Sydney has an advantage where they've done effectively almost like a preseason training camp with the ACL program, the way that hub model worked this year, and we don't see many training camps in and around the A-League seasons. So that'll be fascinating to see how the two line up. It wouldn't surprise me if City play incredibly well and Sydney win the game still somehow, just because they are kind of a football machine and they've kept largely the same group from last season, which already was a premiership championship winning double side. The big question for them is who finds the finish, Adam Lafondra, and the big question for City is, how big of a learning curve is it going to be for Kisnorbo after winning the Youth League and the W League seasons in previous years. So fascinating tactical battle. I cannot bet against them. So of course City are going to win this one comfortably and set down a mark for the year.
Fantastic. And the last game of the opening round is Central Coast Mariners taking on Newcastle Jets. Chrissy, this is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be fantastic for either side to get their season off with a win. It's probably not going to be great for a team who loses. It's probably not going to be great for the league if it's just a boring as nil or draw. What are you expecting from this one?
Jesus Christ, if it's a draw, God help us all.
Imagine that, nil or draw, one shot on target each, and you're just like, what am I watching?
F3 Carby. But no, I'd hope that I'm rooting for Newcastle here. They've already had a shit start to the pre-season. If anybody wants to win a little bit of a pick-me-up, it's definitely the Jets support. I'm going to be rooting for the Jets here.
Interesting. Zach, when you look at the whole of round one, all those 5 fixtures, which one of those catches your eye the most? From a neutral point of view, which one do you look at and go, geez, that's the match that I'm most interested in watching?
From an entertainment point of view, probably the Mariners versus the Jets, but that's just because there'll be probably about 12 own goals and several people, have a heart attack or whatever. It's decent to happen.
Man, so
But yeah, from a competition point of view, I'd have to say Sydney versus City. I think that's probably going to be close to the title decider this season. They're just so far away from the rest of the pack.
Chrissy, taking a look at all of the games in round one, which team do you reckon has the most to gain from a victory this week?
the easiest victory, I probably would have to say, ooh, my mic just went.
That's all right. I ripped my headphones out before, so...
We're really loving it here, aren't we? Where everything's falling apart. The easiest win I'd have to say would be against MacArthur. Everybody's been talking up and saying that they're the team that you should be watching out for, especially who their manager is, but they haven't made that many. I think they're an okay side. They're a good side, but I don't think they're good enough to win the first round.
Interesting. Sean, I'll give you the negative side of that question. Which team do you think overall has the most to lose from a poor performance in round one?
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle had such a rough off-season that if they go out round one and lose to arguably what has been the worst side in the division for the last 3 years and is their local rivals, I can just see that, like Chrissy kind of mentioned it, that they need to pick me up, and the perfect tonic would be winning by a goal or two or some sort of drama or some sort of gutsy performance. Looking at their preseason results against other A-League sides, they have scored at least 3 goals in most of the games that I've seen on social media, but they've also conceded at least 3 goals during that period. 3-3 draws with Melbourne City, and I think another side, I apologize, I've forgotten, and I think they most recently lost 4-3 to Zach's team, Wellington Phoenix. So they're clearly going after it, and they're clearly trying to score goals. If there's a team that you can then keep clean sheet against, it's probably the Mariners at the moment. Apologies, Mariners fans. So yeah, I think a loss for Newcastle round one would be the most deflating to their fan base and their player group and whatever else. And at time of recording, still don't have a permanent manager announced. So there's a whole bunch that they need, and I think they would desperately need 3 points round one.
Closing loss in round one would do the club or their supporters much of a favour. What we're going to do now, though, is take a very quick break, and then we're going to jump into our Hall of Fame. Taking a look at the Hall first is look at the results from last week. Sean, you and I were on the podcast last week. We said that this was going to be a bit of an epic showdown. We had 3 excellent nominations for the Hall of Fame. It was a heavyweight battle. Taking a look at the results, in third place with 22.4% of the vote, we had the sort of fuck Foxtel Melbourne launch. What was it? The A-League had Fox Sports organised an A-League, W-League season launch in Sydney, and I think it was the following day or 2 days after, Melbourne did one with all the Melbourne-based teams. There was Ferraris, there was helicopters, it was a big show, but that came in third. That came in third. In second place, we have the Game of Two Halves pilot episode with Hayley Rowley as the funniest writer as part of that. That received 25.1% of the votes, which means the Central Coast Mariners, with 42.5% of the vote, they are now inducted into the Reserve Team Hall of Fame. They sit there nicely alongside Marvin, his 2 best friends. Second time of asking, but well deserved that they made it into the Hall of Fame. I put a big call out last week, really tried to amp them up. I was disappointed they didn't get in the first time. I thought they were a shoo-in. They're finally in there. And I think the Hall of Fame is better for it, in my opinion. What we're going to do now, though, is take a look at our nominations for this week's Hall of Fame vote. Chrissy, I'll go to you first. Who are you nominating to join the Reserve Team Hall of Fame?
Oh, it's so hard. There are so many insane moments in this league where you've wanted to make sure that somebody is put in the limelight. But some moments that have really made you guys think this league can't get any more meme-worthy than this.
Oh, you asking
us? Was that? Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was an open question or a rhetorical question.
Open question that just sparked my memory because it's been so long since this league has been on. But there were some key moments in last season that really went, oh my Jesus God, I can't believe this has happened.
So I can jump in with my nomination if you promise not to steal it, because I think Bran and I have learnt slowly but surely over the course of the opening weeks of this podcast. I went on a week of 5 weeks straight winning, and I haven't won since in the last few weeks. Michelle came in and nominated you, and obviously that wins. But memes will get you victories, and memes will get you votes. So my nomination for this week is the Aaron Moy banner with the exploding head, because I still see that image come up on soccer Twitter every now and then and just giggle at it like a little child. Because I actually didn't see it. I was in the stand behind the thing. So it was only after that I saw it blowing up on Twitter and realising how ridiculous and how much of a joke we made ourselves look with that one. But I'm nominating that for this week also because I think it's going to look great on the collage. But that's kind of a good example of just a meme-worthy event. Just think anything relating to the Central Coast Mariners, because like that's probably what Bran will nominate. And also they just seem to, like, they get votes. The Mariners get votes. They're the meme team of the A-League.
I have two, so you can just steal one of mine if you want.
All right, Zach, let's go to you. What are your nominations?
Well, I've got Louis Fenton's interview from last year after there was an obvious handball against City, and Archie Tottenham asked him how he felt after the game. He just said, "It's fucked. It's just fucked." Live on Fox Television, right to Archie's face, which was my highlight of last season. Or the New Year's Eve game last year at Central Coast, where it was too windy, so the sauce bottles just deflated, and they had to cart them away.
Well, I mean, thing that we love in the Reserve Team Hall of Fame podcast, so I can certainly get behind some deflated sauce bottles. Chrissy, this is also, as well, a historic moment. I can't believe I glossed over. This is the first time we've actually had a Hall of Fame inductee on the podcast for the Hall of Fame segment, because you yourself are in the Hall of Fame, and here you are nominating someone for the Hall of Fame. So this is historical. Who are you getting behind?
I'm going to go back and I'm going to nominate Bruno Fornaroli, because his speech during that Melbourne City Cup was something of glory. And I'm never going to forget it. I never will be able to forget it.
That was also good. So essentially, to wrap up, so we have a Wellington Phoenix fuck off, we have a Fornaroli fuck off, we have the Aaron Moy banner, and the deflating sauce bottles. So those are our four nominations for the week. I'll get behind Zach's at the deflating sauce bottles for the Mariners. I mean, you can never have too much Central Coast in there. So we'll have a poll up on Twitter with those four. Sean, you're loving this. You're going to have to add a fourth option to the poll. We'll get it posted. We'll see what the people decide. Really getting into it, and we'll see which of those nominations join. That is the Reserve Team Hall of Fame. All right, jumping back into things. What we're really going to... Oh, jeepers!
You know, I'm going to leave all these in. Like, usually I try and cover it up for you in the edit, but it's a Christmas episode, so everyone's going to see. You're learning. You like Bambi on ice.
It's Christmas. Have a day off. Don't do that much, you know.
I know,
that's
mate.
right. That's it.
Had too many eggnogs on the way before.
I'm sorry. Why do you think I was late? You know, what else do you think I was doing?
I told him before you got on, I was like, he's either going to be fixing his hair and he's going to ask us how his hair looks when he sits down, or he hasn't figured out which kits are going on the back wall, and sure enough, it was the kit thing. So, I always know.
Yeah, that's it. You've figured me out. That's it. The two most important questions. How does my hair look? How do the kits look?
And they both look great.
Easy.
You always know the answer.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, I will try again. All right, jumping back into things, what we're going to do now is really get into the Christmas spirit. I posed a question to all of our guests this week, taking a look at the clubs in the A-League and W-League. What would each of them hope to find under the Christmas tree this year? Like, what is one particular gift that each club is really hoping for and would really easiest? So starting off with Adelaide United. Zach, you've got Adelaide United. What do you think they most want for Christmas in 2020?
Well, they just really need the youth to, crack on with their development. Like, their squad has got an average age of 23.4, 16-year-old hovering around their first team squad. Like, it's a really exciting youthful squad, but you need that to kick on. There's a really lack of experience there. There's some experienced players at the back, but it's a worry for Adelaide that they don't have that experience. But it's also, it could turn into a massive positive that you've got those players developing and maybe turning into a world-beating squad that could win the World Cup or win World Cup in 2 weeks or whatever.
Fantastic. Moving on, Brisbane Roar. Chrissy, you had a look. What can the Brisbane Roar hope for Christmas for 2020?
Well, let's say top 6 would be great for them because they've been struggling a lot recently as well. They're definitely one of the teams that would be at the bottom half of the ladder along with Newcastle and Central Coast. So I think they're just hoping for a couple more points than they did last season.
And going back to you again, what can Canberra United hope to find under the Christmas tree this year?
Good old Canberra. They so far they've gotten pretty much everything. They've gotten a great new manager, a few great youth signed to the side. Maybe a replacement, like a missing link, a bit along the lines of another Ellie Carpenter, a little star of their team. That will probably be something they'd like for Christmas.
Fantastic. Moving on, we've got the Central Coast Mariners. I've got Central Coast. So what I think I'm going to start off with is what they definitely do not want for Christmas. And what I think they don't want for Christmas is another wooden spoon. They finished last 3 years in a row now and 4 times in the last 5. Like another wooden spoon, it would kind of be like your nan giving you a 4-pack of like Lynx Africa deodorant again. Like it isn't something you want, and she's given it to you for Christmas 3 years in a row and now 4 times in the last 5 Christmases. So I think that's sort of the parallel. They definitely don't want that. What they do want, I think, is their New Year's Eve fireworks display, which is coming up to go off without a hitch, considering what's occurred in previous New Year's Eve games. And also the birds that were nesting in the grandstand. I think they should make another nest at the ground because that was pretty exciting and could be the most entertaining thing we see at a Mariners game this year. Moving down the alphabetical list, actually, for Christmas, they actually want to have an active support group this season. There's been a lot of drama about bullpen membership prices. Then they moved the bullpen. They were going to be behind the goal. Then they were in the corner. Then they the club trademarked the name MacArthur Bullpen. So things are sort of all over the place here, and they're not off to a good start. So I think if they could have an active support group, they'd be very happy. And other than that, I think they would just love to make the finals in their first.
It's not even called the bullpen anymore.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's because the club trademarked them. So I think they're now just the MacArthur supporter group, I believe. And I will be honest, guys, I'll let you in on a little secret. I have infiltrated the MacArthur supporter group on Facebook, so I am up to date on all the happenings, all the hot goss, all the hurt feelings about everything unfolding in the active support group. But yep, I think MacArthur would hope for that for Christmas and would like to make the finals. Moving down the list, next up is Melbourne City. Sean, what would Melbourne City want for Christmas this year?
They need a premiership or a title. Like, the City Football Group's been in charge now for longer than we were ever Melbourne Heart. We spoke about that at length, and there's been some fantastic memories. Don't make no mistake. I think a lot of different people, when the club came in, kind of were a bit haphazard about what that was going to mean for the league, and I think they've done a fantastic job elevating not just their own facilities, but kind of setting new benchmarks for the likes of, Western Sydney and Sydney FC and Melbourne Victory to kind of match with in terms of training facilities and in terms of academy structures and all that sort of stuff. So that professionalism they've brought to our game here, fantastic to see, but we desperately need to fill out the A-League trophy cabinet. The Youth League team's been fantastic. The W League side is potentially the best Australian football team there's ever been. So, we really need to get that A-League side stepping up to match the rest of the club. And even if it's not a championship title, at least a premiership, and say that we are taking steps in the right direction would be the next stage for us.
It'd be interesting to see how you'd go wrapping the toilet seat to then put under the tree. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a gift wrapping expert by any means, but, I don't know how we'd get around that. But thankfully, Santa does that, not us. So that's a great answer. I love it. Coming back to you again, Sean, the Melbourne Victory. What can they hope for Christmas this year?
I'm going to get savaged on Twitter, and that's absolutely fine. Bring it on, Victory fans. I'll fight you all. But I have called for patience for Grant Brebner, because I think what they're going to see this season is, we saw a little bit in the Asian Champions League, they're going to be very different to the way Melbourne Victory sides have set up over the last few seasons and the last few years. And that's good. That's needed. They can't just keep playing a 4-2-3-1 every year. They just can't keep re-signing Marco Rojas and James Teresi, even though I'm sure it was tempting once he left Adelaide. So, I really think they need to show patience with him. They're playing with a big target man up top. top this season. They're playing with a little bit of a different defensive structure as well. So really, I just hope that they are patient enough to go through this full rebuild. Not rebuild, because I think they are still talented and I think they still do have a very good squad. But, you know, they're going to have to be patient. They're going to have to realise that this will take time to transition into that new style. And I hope they give Grant Brebner the platform to actually see through what his plans and intentions are, not just for this season, but into next season as well. If they turn around and finish 10th, like, I'm sure that's probably not what they want and not the direction they want to be heading in. But I just hope that they continue to show some patience building through Grant Brebner and his new squad.
Fantastic. Moving on. Next up, we have the Newcastle Jets. How long's your list of things that they would want for? How long's your list of things that they would want for Christmas? Zach, you've been thinking about this one. What is one or many of the things that you reckon the Jets might ask for Christmas this year?
I mean, they'll probably need his whole sack full, but the one I've got is a new owner, because we're 6 days away as of time of filming from the start of the new league, and the owner hasn't injected any money into the club since October 2019, and there's no manager. Like the acting manager is not even called an acting manager. It's just, you know, it's just all over the place. They need someone there to give them impetus and give them charge. It looks like the A-League might be about to buy their license out. There's been
on the top, and, you know, a new owner could revitalise the whole club, really. I don't think that's an over-exaggeration. Moving on, Sean, you've got the Perth Glory. What do they want for Christmas?
They want HBF Stadium to be an absolute fortress this year and to be guaranteed 3 points when they play at home, because I think the best Perth Glory sides we've seen in the year that they won their title under Popovich, it was pretty much impossible to go over to Perth and get 3 points. It's a long trip. It's basically the span of a continent if you're looking on a map or if you're listening internationally. And a strong Perth Glory team is usually one that's difficult to beat at home. A weak Perth Glory team tends to have a lot of 5-4 games and 4-3 games over in Perth in the sunshine. So, yeah, I think that's desperately what they want to try and get this season. They've got a young coach, again, a debuting coach in Richie Garcia for the season. They've kept pretty stable front four, but their backline's got some suspicions and some issues with it. If they really get that structure right and turn their home ground into a proper difficult place to play, I think they're on board for a fantastic season.
Coming back to, again, Sydney FC, what can the reigning champions and reigning premiers want for Christmas if they haven't already got enough for Christmas, you know?
Yeah, they really need a Lynx Africa 4-pack from their nan. I think that's what... No, I'm kidding. I just had to do the throwback to the previous one. Look, Sydney FC, they're probably the most difficult one to actually go through and try and pick something out for, to be completely honest. I think what they really need, though, and this is a luxury item because I think they've made all the right seeing. They haven't signed anyone yet, which is, I think, is fascinating, but I think it's also a credit to how strong the group was that they had last season. They haven't still really solved the Adam Lafondra issue and how they're going to replace his goals. We've seen that they're playing Barbarouses and Bahaja up top, but I think they're very similar players and looking to make too many of the same runs where they could become very predictable. They've got youngsters in Luka Ivanovic and Patrick Wood who offer something different, but I think what they would need, if you would ask most Sydney fans, it'd be a shiny new centre forward. And I say new centre forward, don't sign Bobo again, he's 38 now, like, you don't need him. But like someone that is of a similar ilk or quality to Lafondra who could really, you know, take them to the next level, not just domestically, but also when we have Asian Champions League triumphs and stuff like that. To be honest, I'm shocked that they didn't go out a bit more aggressively from some of the forwards that we've had in the competition. Like Tommy Juric would have been a very good example of someone that they could have used in that environment, even Bernie Abini to an extent. Sorry, Chrissy, but like he would have been, I think, a great shout for a return to that fold and to that team. So yeah, a shiny new centre forward for Sydney, and I think everything else is going to pretty much go their way anyway.
Moving on, Zach, we're coming to you now for the Wellington Phoenix. What can the Knicks hope for, or what would they want for Christmas?
Well, it's a travel bubble between the two countries because at the moment I don't think we've played a home game since February or March. It's just it's a horrible situation for the club because as a fan base, there's no team to get behind. You grow a fan base by being in the stadium. You maintain a fan base by being in a stadium. You don't do that by having them playing, you know, out of Wollongong. That's not how you. I mean, maybe you grow a fan base over there, but that's not how you keep your fan base in Wellington. It's also horrific for the gate receipts because Wellington is so quite heavily reliant on our gate receipts. We just lost our biggest sponsors. We're even more reliant than ever. And if we don't have those gate receipts for over a season, then like having to accommodate the staff and the players in Wollongong just may simply become untenable. But that actually may not happen because it was meant to be announced before March, but then Sydney has decided it wants to be all COVID-y. So you know.
Root of it, like, come on, guys, like, geez, so essentially what you're saying is Sydney has ruined Christmas, really.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep, cool. That's what we can take away from this. Chrissy, the Western Sydney Wanderers, what do they want for Christmas this year?
Like a trophy other than the ACL to speak about. Because
Couple of trophies on the wish list this year.
we're definitely getting sick of repeating the same thing, but we won the ACL. I'm even getting sick of hearing it.
Moving on, lastly, we have Western United. I'm going to take care of this one. The biggest thing that Western United could hope for is a stadium. And even more than that, I'm sure that really they would just even be happy with ground to be broken on their stadium. Anything that indicates that it will actually be built. It was announced the other week that they'll be playing home games this season at AAMI Park. I think they're playing 6 fixtures there. They are desperate for a stadium, and really without one, they're totally lost. It was such a big part of their pitch, not needing government funding. They were going to have a totally privately built and funded stadium out in Tarneit. It's sort of been central to their trying to identify with that whole Western region. And, playing out of AAMI Park, that's getting him nowhere. Playing out of GMHBA, that's getting him nowhere. Playing in Ballarat, that's not going to work. So they desperately want either the stadium to be built or even just a slight indicator that it's on the way. I think that's pretty much all Western United can really hope for this year. So that covers what all the teams would want for Christmas, but we've got one more big group that we need to talk about, what they would want for Christmas, and that is the league as a whole. Sean, I'll go to you first. What would the A-League want as a Christmas present?
It's not what we want. It's what we desperately, desperately need. Like, everybody hates getting socks, but, they serve a purpose and you wear them throughout the course of the year. And we desperately need to get a new TV rights deal. And maybe it's not even a TV rights deal. Maybe it's some sort of digital broadcaster. But we absolutely have to be getting every single A-League game out there at a reasonable hour by a TV company that isn't necessarily going to dictate poor decisions from a fan experience and from a club experience and whatever else. We need to get all of our W League fixtures also broadcast, even if it is not necessarily live, understanding the challenges that come with whatever else. Whether that's through someone like Optus Sport or even moving to Kayo or something like that. I do want to get away from the Foxtel media market and Murdoch Media and all that other shit, but that's a conversation topic for another week. Even if it is FFA, now that they're no longer managing the A-League itself, taking the plunge and saying that they're going to record all their own content and then selling the rights either domestically or internationally or to a bigger broadcaster, that would be fantastic. FFA is never really that brave with the decisions that they make. It is a high cost, I think, to try and get your own dispatching and marketing, but if it works out and works really well and we can get the A-League and W League into more markets internationally, the FFA will reap all the rewards of that. They just have to cover their operating costs, and anything above that will be profit. So James Johnson, we know you're a massive fan of the show and listen in every week, so if you are listening, please be brave. Let's try and record and broadcast our own content within the FFA, and then let's sell on those TV rights deals, because we shouldn't be bent over a barrel by Foxtel each and every year.
Easy. I'm going to jump in here as well for what I think the A-League would want for Christmas. And I think with, the way COVID impacted everything last season, I think the main thing is that they can just get through this to playing every single game. As Zach said, with Wellington playing so long away from home, hopefully they can return to Wellington to play home games again. I'm just sort of hoping that the league can return to some, sort of normal in a safe way, but also on top of that as well, just having fans in games. Hopefully we get to a stage at some point in the near future where fans can attend games, they can be in stadiums in a safe environment, because I think of all the major codes in Australia, the AFL, the NRL, the A-League was most impacted by having no fans. We all talk about how important, fan atmosphere is to games, and, that's sort of why we're all hooked and we love being involved in that. So I think if the A-League can get fans back to normal and get through their full spread of games this season, I think that'd be fantastic for them. Chrissy, jumping to you now, what can the W League hope to get for Christmas this year?
I think the W League is hoping to get the same thing that they've been hoping to get for seasons before this season. It's a longer season and a high rate up season, because you still see that these players, they're working second jobs. And with COVID that's hit, they're now probably working, 3 jobs. They need a full season to get paid enough money.
What about you? What do you think the W League would like for Christmas?
Well, I've said it before. I've said it. I'll say it again. We just from a New Zealand standpoint, And from, I think, a league standpoint, you just need that Phoenix team. Like, there's no point having, I don't think there's any point having clubs that only are on one side of the game. Like, you need to have that structure. And the Phoenix, like, we were pretty much prepared and had everything down to have a W League team. We're prepared to put the backing behind it, the financial backing behind it. And there's just really no reason not to have a Phoenix team. There was even suggestions of it being based in New South Wales for most of the year, so that other teams wouldn't have to pay so much to fly over here. Like, we really are willing to pretty much do anything to accommodate the league, and there's no reason why the Phoenix shouldn't have a W League team.
Have you got an A-League one as well that you'd like to throw in?
Well, it's a bit selfish from a New Zealand point of view, but that I didn't have to travel internationally. So I'd love a second New Zealand team. I don't think that's going to happen, and the league, most people wouldn't want it, but I'd really love that to happen.
Classic Kiwis. I mean, always being selfish. That's what they're known for. I mean, we just come through one way or the other. It's come through. What we want to do now, though, is, guys, it's time to put our money where our mouth is. Really, with round one so close, a smart podcast host might have put this segment straight after the round one previews, but I digress. We've done it at the end, and the running order is what it is, and I stand by it. But what we're going to do now is throw out some tips for the upcoming W League and A League round one. So, Chrissy, I'll throw to you first. We'll start off with your W League tips and then roll through your A League tips. What are your predictions for the opening rounds this season?
Predictions for the first three games, of course, Western Sydney Wanderers taking the first game. Out of the Jets and Brisbane, I'm going to go with Brisbane. They look to have a stronger team than Newcastle Jets, even though I did say earlier on in the pod that I do have hope in who they have signed. I still think Brisbane will come up on top. And between Perth Glory and Canberra, I'd have to say Canberra, because Glory is still, in a way, struggling after Sam Kerr had left, even though that they had a whole season to pick it up. I think they're still going to struggle, at least for the first 6 rounds. As for A-League, though, again, I'm going to pick the Western Sydney Wanderers on top of Macarthur, because if I pick Macarthur, how dare I? For Western United and Adelaide, I'm going to go the Knicks.
Zach's happy.
Man.
Keep going. So we got City versus Melbourne. Melbourne City.
Melbourne City. I'm going to say Melbourne City here.
Then we still need your tips for the F3, and then lastly, Sydney against Melbourne City in the W League.
Melbourne City for that one. And for the F3 derby, like I said, hopefully the Jets come up on top for this one, and their fans have something to cheer for.
Interesting. Zach, we're going to come to you next. What are your tips? Going through, again, the W League first and then the A League, who are you tipping to win?
Well, going purely off watching last week's Preserve podcast, which is very good. You should check it out if you haven't watched it. But I'm probably going to go for Melbourne victory, Brisbane, Canberra, and Melbourne City. Let's go with Melbourne City. But then for the A-League, I think Macarthur will win. I think they've got quality imports. I think that they'll. And also, last time there was I think that in the A-League, Western Sydney. I just think because last time there was a new team that faced a team that they kind of had a bit of a rivalry with. The new team won in Western Sydney and us. So Western United and us. So I just think the Macarthur will win. They've also got some quality imports. Next, Western United and Adelaide. As much as it pains me to say it, because Mark Rudan, I think that Western United will win that. I think Diamante is just going to put on, and he's a bit in a class of his own. The Roar and the Phoenix. I'm a Phoenix fan. I'm going to pick the Phoenix, and I also think that with the import that we brought in Tommy Hammond and this squad we've got, I think that we probably should win that. Sydney and Melbourne City. I think that Melbourne City. I think Sydney will edge it just because they're at home and they've got that home turf advantage. Otherwise, I think I would have picked Melbourne City. And then Central Coast Mariners and Newcastle Jets. I think it might be a draw. I don't think anyone's going to get a winner of that. It's
hard to imagine anyone scoring, let's be honest. It could be a 0 or 1. Sean, I'll come to you next. what are your tips starting off with the W League?
My first tip is that Zach should be grateful for the travel bubble because Chrissy looked like she was going to kill him as soon as he didn't tip Western Sydney, but that's fine.
It's a brave person who tips twice against Western Sydney with Chrissy live on the pod, but I mean...
I have faith in the Tasman Sea. It will keep me safe.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, look, I'm going to go with... this is a tough fixture, so I'm not sure what the scenario is with Melbourne Victory. I think the biggest challenge they've got is they've just been in 2 weeks of quarantine. So I don't think Victory's a bad side by any stretch. I think this fixture could be very different when it's played in, 6 weeks, 7 weeks' time. I'm going to go with Western Sydney to start the Carl Robinson Revolution with 3 points this week. Don't hurt me, Chrissy. Like, I'm scared of you, you know that. Newcastle, Brisbane. I'm going to go with Brisbane. I just can't go past Brisbane this season. I think they look stronger than everybody else. It wouldn't shock me if, similar to Melbourne City last year in the W League, going undefeated and kind of romping their way through the final series, I'm kind of expecting a similar thing from Brisbane. I think they've got a good young manager in Jake Goodship. I think he is so far making all the right signings from the local NPL talent as well. So yeah, I just can't go past Brisbane at the moment. Perth and Canberra, I think, is a tricky one. I think Perth Glory have a very young squad, and so far it's the squad that's probably been least talked about. Only their departures have really been made note of. And I think they were also a side that I think rely quite heavily on getting their US-based recruitment right, in terms of loan signings, whatever else, for some of their complementary players, which hasn't happened so far this year. At the same time, while I rate Vicky Linton very highly, same thing for Canberra. We haven't heard too much about him. I would say, personally, Canberra United just shades it for me, but I'm going to back a draw in this one because I think that's going to be a fixture where potentially they cancel each other out. And Sydney AFC versus Melbourne City, I'm going to back Sydney FC, which pains me, but as far as the W League is concerned, I'd like to see a little bit more from Melbourne City in terms of final third signings. I think they've got some promising young talent, but they are very young. Most of them are in their teens. Most of them are youth level Matildas. So I think Sydney FC at the moment, with the likes of Remy Simpson, who we've spoken about, Princess Sabini, a variety of different players throughout the course of that side, I think they're going to have enough firepower at home to start the season, backed by hopefully a crowd, if everything goes ahead and according to plan. I think they'll start the season pretty strong, but I wouldn't write off Melbourne City entirely. I think their round 3, round 4 squad will be entirely different. The A-League stuff, again, I'm going to go with Western Sydney. I like MacArthur. I think MacArthur have made great signings. I'm very excited to see what Extraberia and Susueta are going to do in the league. However, they haven't played any preseason games yet. So I think the final pieces of the MacArthur puzzle aren't necessarily in place. It wouldn't shock me if this one ended up being a draw. I think Milicic is going with a strong defensive base. I think he's playing with 2 deep midfielders. I think he's playing with 2 young and promising centre-backs in Jovanovic and Susnar. But I think Western Sydney at home, hopefully with the decent backing, and Chrissy no doubt running a riot in the stands behind them, will be enough to push them home. Western United, Adelaide United, I'm going to go with a draw for this one. I think the two are going to cancel each other out. It's arguably the A-League's oldest side and starting 11 against the A-League's Adelaide's youngest side, as Zach previously mentioned. I think they will eventually draw. Brisbane versus Wellington. I'm going to back Wellington here. I think David Ball is quality and people underrate him. I think DeVee is quality. And, captain's an interesting one. If they get their defence right and if they get that defensive midfield cover right, they will be fantastic. They're also playing with the coach they had last year, so no real changes there. Brisbane coming in, Warren Moon, he's going to learn some lessons over the first few weeks of the season, as are all of our new coaches. Sydney FC, Melbourne City. This one's tough. I have to back City. I can't not back City. I didn't go with them in the A-League, in the W League, but I've got to do it in the A-League fixture. Just because I'd be lying to myself if I didn't think we couldn't get something out of this game. Having said that, nothing would shock me more than Ryan Grant scoring with his other nipple this time out in a scrappy 1-0 victory for them. As Central Coast Newcastle Jets, I'm going for Central Coast. We've spoken at length. Their very first podcast, Brand, if you remember, 9 weeks ago, was about the Mariners and wanting to see brighter days for them. I got nothing against Newcastle, and I've kind of already highlighted throughout the course of this episode that they desperately need a win to start their season, but I just want to see the Mariners do a little bit better this season. Maybe still bottom of the league, but at least more competitive, at least give their fans something to cheer for, because they've got a fantastic group of people still supporting the club down there. So I'm going with the Coast for that one, but splitting hairs.
Lovely. I'll go through my tips just quickly as well, starting off with the W League. Western Sydney taking on the Melbourne Victory. I have a feeling that's going to be a draw. I'm going to pick Brisbane Roar to beat the Newcastle Jets. I'm tipping Canberra to get the job done over Perth Glory. City against Sydney, again, that's a tricky one. I'm going to go with City. I think they were just so strong last year. I know they've lost a lot of players, but I'm just going to back back the club, the system. Vidicic is the manager. I think they will get the result there. In the A-League, Western Sydney taking on Macarthur, I can see that one being a draw. I think both sides, new managers, a lot still to sort of work out. I think that one playing out as maybe a draw will be the most likely outcome, so I'm going to tip that. I think Western United will beat Adelaide in round 1. I also think that the Wellington Phoenix will get the job done over Brisbane as well. Sydney versus Melbourne City. Sean, I'm in the same boat as you where this is such a tough one to predict. My City influence has me leaning toward this season. This pre-season. I think he will be the difference in this game. I'm going to tip City just. And lastly, Central Coast taking on the Newcastle Jets. I am going to pick the Mariners. I just think they're a better squad. With such a tumultuous off-season for Newcastle in terms of continuity, no manager, just players leaving, I think continuity favours the Mariners, and I think that's going to be key here. So I'm going to tip them to win the first F3 derby of the season. And guys, that brings us to the end of the festive special Christmas edition of the Reserve Team podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. Chrissy, where can people go to check out more of your stuff on social media or anywhere else?
Try and follow the breadcrumbs from the Ladies League. So look up Ladies A-League on Twitter, and I swear you find me from there. And if you see Tricheska on Twitter, that's me.
Fantastic. Zach, where can people find more of your content as well?
Well, I'm on Twitter at NZG24, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's written there. And also I'm on the reserve team, obviously. I've got a roundup of the Phoenix transfers coming out soon, so have a look out for that.
Fantastic. And Sean, if people don't know already, where can they go to check out more of your stuff as well?
In the links of the description below, of course, and on this channel, probably 3 or 4 times a week as the season gets underway. But yeah, if you want to, you can check out the links to the Twitter. Of course, go and check out the Reserve Team for Zach's content, Chrissy's stuff on TLL, all that sort of great stuff as well.
Fantastic. And for me, if you do want to follow me on Twitter, I am at Branson Gibson. Branson with an E-N rather than an O-N. Thanks, Mum and Dad. That's the way that one went. I also have a bunch of articles up on the reserveteam.com.au. Give them a read. Let me know what you think. Don't forget as well to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really does make a difference. Don't forget to comment as well. We love your feedback. We love to engage in discussion as well. Let us know your predictions as well for round 1 for both the W League and the A League. Don't forget to check out the reserveteam.com.au for all your latest Australian and New Zealand football out there. Shop as well. They have got the tracksuit that Sean was holding up, the jerseys that I was holding up, and the jersey, of course, that Chrissy is wearing. Don't forget to like all our social media channels as well, and have a Merry Christmas and a fantastic New Year.